Greetings YouTube, my name is Alex and I am the Reef Dork, and today I'm going to give you an update on the ITC ALR1 Cheeto reactor. Now the update is basically going to be my review of this unit, having used it for a bit. I now know what it's like growing Cheeto, I know what it does to nutrients, and I know what it's like to clean it and maintain it. I'll also tell you a few things about what it's like as a refugium for keeping copepods, and what it's like for light spill into your living room, and things like whether or not it leaks little strands of Cheeto that end up getting clogged in your skimmer, like what normally happens on an open refugium. So let's kick things off with growth. So here's a quick video I took when I first set it up 6 weeks ago. Small amount of Cheeto in the bottom section, medium amount of Cheeto in the middle section, and nothing whatsoever in the top section. I started off with only 2 fish, so it had a low bio load to start with, although that did build up to 4. Let's see how we've got on. So less than 2 months later, here we are, and the results speak for themselves, don't they? Look at that, that's pretty solid growth. Middle section now completely packed, bottom section probably 95% packed, and even in the top section where there was nothing before, that's probably 50% full. So I'm really pleased with that. It's done really well. I've been running the lights on a 12-hour cycle, so they come on at night and go off 12 hours later in the morning, and I've been running a pump at 1,350 litres per hour, which is bang in line with what the manufacturer recommends. Now, I'm really pleased with these results. I think it's been pretty goddamn solid, and to get that much growth on a brand new tank in less than 2 months, I think it shows this thing works. Of course, Cheeto growth is no good unless it's reducing nitrates, so let me tell you about that. First off, I'll give you a bit of background on the tank. So I don't run a skimmer on this, so the algae reactor is doing almost all of the heavy lifting. I don't have any live rock, that's all synthetic rock. And I do weekly water changes of about 10%, and I've got a small bag, about ½ a litre of Siporax, but that's it. The lion's share of the nutrient reduction is the algae reactor. In terms of test kits, for phosphate, I use the ELOS high range, which is very accurate. And for nitrate, I use the NIOS nitrate test kit. Very easy to read, so hopefully the results are fairly accurate. In terms of nitrates then, they peaked at about 5 parts per million after 3 or 4 weeks, and then dipped off, in fact no, about 2 or 3 weeks, and then dipped off and have levelled off at around 3, maybe even a little bit less, maybe 1 part per million, so very low. Phosphates on the other hand, they started off nice and low for the first couple of weeks at 0.03, but then went up to 0.14, and in fact the ELOS test kit only measures up to 0.14, so it might have even been a little bit higher. So I've had to put in some Roa Phos, and that has sorted the problem, but it does mean that at this stage in this tank, the Cheeto reactor isn't doing enough to control phosphates. Now, if it had some help from a skimmer and some other bits of filtration as well, that might make a difference, and actually it might be that that balances out over time, and frankly BRS TV have done a much better video than I can ever do on algae beds, so go and check that out. I'll put a link in the description to that, and that will give you their full experiment. But from my point of view, nitrates is doing a fantastic job. Phosphates might take a bit more time to balance it out. So of course those are the main things, but you also want to know what this is like to live with day to day. So next up I'm going to show you what it's like to maintain and what you have to do to clean it. Let's check it out. First thing to tell you is that you need to take it out of the sump completely in order to give it a proper clean and empty. When you stand the basket on its feet, the whole unit is about 98 centimeters tall, and that means that you can't open it up and clean it in any Evolution Aqua or Red Sea Reefer cabinet. It's too tall. So you need to take it out, unscrew the little thumb screws, and then pull the light unit out. The light unit I find does get a bit of a covering in slime algae, but that's pretty easy to get rid of. You don't need to scrub it hard. All I did was use a bit of kitchen towel, and look at that, it comes off nicely. The next thing you need to do is clean the basket thing. Now this, I found the tube itself doesn't really get that much algae on the outside, it's on the inside, and that means that you need to use a bottle brush to clean it. You might find that you'll struggle to get a bottle brush that is long enough. This one I've got here is far too small, so I will put a link in the description to the long bottle brush I ended up buying. But actually, when you've done that, it's pretty easy. Give it a bit of a brush, bit of a rinse out, and you're away. Look at that, looking lovely. So when you've cleaned it all, you plonk it all back in, load it back up with algae. Obviously don't put in too much, but you want to leave in a little bit so it can grow, and then push it all back down. Put the light unit back in and put the whole thing back in place. Now I'm quite lucky here in that the sides of my sump aren't that high and there's nothing behind the algae reactor that gets in the way. But if you have quite a compact sump and quite a packed full sump with high sides particularly, then this can be very awkward to get out. So do bear that in mind, and I would suggest you put it at the front in an easy place to access so it makes it nice and easy to take out. So all in all, cleaning and maintenance is reasonably easy. Certainly a lot easier than cleaning something like a skimmer where you've got to take apart all sorts of bits. The thing you might struggle on is getting the thing out of your sump in the first place. Now bear in mind of course that I've got the smallest of the 3 units and the other ones are going to be that little bit more awkward to take out. Now I have seen some people with bigger tanks than mine that have a dry section in the cabinet keep the algae reactor there, and if that's all plumbed in fine, it'll work really nicely and it'll be much easier to access, but I don't have the cojones to do that. I would be too worried that it would bust a leak and end up spraying water everywhere and draining your entire tank. Now you will of course have noticed that there was a bit of slime algae on the light tube itself. Whilst that comes off very easily, it does reduce the amount of light that goes into growing your Cheeto. And I started to notice that when there was a lot less light spill in my living room at night when the display tank light went off. But that didn't seem to have an effect on nitrates. In fact, at the time towards the end, I found that nitrates actually dropped from 5 to 3. So I don't think it probably has that much of an impact on what it's supposed to do. And the only other problem I found was that when I put it back into the sump, I couldn't get the pump quite in the right place, and so it was buzzing for a bit. It took me about 5 minutes to fix it, and when I did it was fine, but I couldn't really be bothered when I first did that, so there was a slight buzzing sound for a week or so, but that was completely my fault. So the last few bits to tell you about then are light spill. Now, if you've had an open refugium before, you will know that it can flood your living room if you're not careful, with light of course. And this is much better. You do get a little bit of light spill, but it's not very much at all. And in terms of catching all the Cheeto strands, I find when I've had an open refugium before, you always get little bits of Cheeto that get stuck in your skimmer, and then you return pump and reduce efficiency. With this, I've not had a thing of that. There's been no escaping whatsoever. It's got a little strainer at the outlet stage that catches everything, so it does that really well. The other thing you want a fuge for, of course, is microfauna, so a place to breed copepods and amphipods and all that sort of stuff. Now, when I took out all the algae, I didn't really find any amphipods or copepods or any little creepy crawlies wiggling around in there. I did find 1 or 2 mini starfish, presumably Asterina starfish. Don't know how they got in there, but not really an awful lot of wildlife. I don't know if that's because they don't like the intense light or because they don't like the hard flow, but so far I'm finding it's not that great a place to grow microfauna. So that's all I've got to tell you really. Overall, I'm really happy with it. It grows Cheeto well, it's not too difficult to maintain, and it seems to control nutrients. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and in the meantime, thanks for watching, see you soon.